Hi, I'm Darley Newman, and we're here in Newcastle, Delaware. And it was in this courthouse in Newcastle that in 1776, the legislature voted for independence from Great Britain. We're exploring Delaware's role in the American Revolution, going behind the scenes at Haggley Museum and Library to see patents signed by George Washington, and learning about the Nanticoke Indian tribe from Bonnie Hall.
Iwinitu, greetings for peace.
And learning about the merman, a very unusual attraction in a very beautiful museum. We're exploring sites related to the American Revolution and mixing history with travel on this episode of Travels with Darley. We're on a revolutionary road trip in Delaware. We're taking a revolutionary road trip to explore Delaware's contributions to the American Revolution at sites that modern travelers can visit today. In the middle of Britain's 13 colonies, Delaware, with its many waterways, served as a trading hub during the colonial period. The small state only saw one major military engagement during the American Revolution, but there was much happening behind the scenes in Delaware, which we'll uncover in this episode. We're traveling throughout the state, stopping in places like Newcastle, Wilmington, Newark, Coochs Bridge, White Clay Creek State Park, Bombay Hook National Wildlife Refuge, Odessa, Dover, and Lewes. We're starting in the historic city of Newcastle, located just south of Wilmington along the Delaware River, at the Newcastle Courthouse Museum.
This courtroom held all levels of Delaware court, starting in 1732 when this building was built, till 1881 when the courts moved up to Wilmington along with the county seat.
Part of Delaware's first state national historic park, the Newcastle Courthouse is one of the oldest surviving courthouses in the United States and a registered National Historic Landmark. Site Supervisor Juliette Wurm shows me some of the highlights.
For the assembly room, and here we talk about William Penn, because William Penn also owned Delaware. Delaware used to be part of Pennsylvania. Since they're so small, they wanted to have equal representation with other people, and that was actually one of the disagreements they had with Pennsylvania. So eventually in 1704, they get their own legislature, they get their own assembly, which meant right here in our assembly room. June 15th, 1776, in this very room, they decided to separate from Great Britain and Pennsylvania. So they were no longer the lower three counties, they became the Delaware state.
Delaware is the first state.
So Delaware is the first state because they were the first to ratify the Constitution.
Well, it's neat to be standing on this balcony in this historic building with such significance.
So this is where on July 24th, 1776, they read the Declaration of Independence the first time to the citizens of Newcastle. Newcastle used to be the capital of Delaware. It had the Delaware River that's literally 3 blocks away. In 1777, they decide maybe it's not the greatest idea to stay here because we have British warships going up and down this river. So they decided to move the capital eventually down to Dover, where it is today.
Michael Connolly of the Newcastle Historical Society guides me through the Newcastle Historic District, with hundreds of well-preserved buildings dating from the early 18th century to the 20th. Strolling these streets is like stepping back in time.
So the Newcastle National Landmark District here where we are is about a 4-block by 5-block area. It's got about 600 historic structures in it.
The Amstel House, any relation to the beer?
A little bit. In the 17th century, Newcastle was called New Amstel, which goes back to the Amstel River in Amsterdam. The claim to fame to this room is that there was a wedding here on April 30th, 1784. There was a very special guest in attendance. That was George Washington. He was very popular, he just had a big win in the Revolution, and he came through Newcastle on the way home. Happened to be the day of the wedding.
He crashed a wedding?
He crashed a wedding. So
George Washington's the wedding crasher?
Exactly.
We walk over to one of the oldest Episcopal parishes in the United States, Emanuel Church. We're here outside of an Anglican church, but not far away, there's also a historic Presbyterian church.
Yes, that's right. Newcastle Presbyterian Church is just down the block. And the churches at the time of the Revolution were a little bit adversarial. The Presbyterians were a little bit more on the fiery side. They were a little bit more rebellious. They had a lot of Scots and Scots-Irish over there, so they were a little ready to break away from England. two different factions, kind of representing Delaware and, in fact, all the colonies at that time, where not everybody was 100% behind this idea of revolution. A third of the people were for the revolution, a third of the people were against it, and then a third of the people were sort of neutral.
Approaching 1776, the tides would turn. We're traveling just 30 minutes west of Newcastle to the city of Newark, home to the University of Delaware. During the American Revolution, Newark was a market town, with the majority of residents opposed to British rule. Historian Jim Jones takes us back to the time period.
What would this have looked like during the American Revolution here in Newark?
The folks that were most numerous around here were Presbyterians, followed by the Baptists, both of which sort of had a reputation for not being really fond of the king. The British probably also looked at Newark as, let's get through here as fast as we can without any fuss. So that's why on September the 8th, they broke camp and then came up from Coochs Bridge, 17,000 to 18,000 soldiers. It was big, and we took them all day to get through town and headed on up into Pennsylvania.
Coochs Bridge was the site of the only battle fought in Delaware during the American Revolution.
The house across the street there, which was under construction in the summer of 1777, the story has it that there were workmen up on the roof, so they would have seen a dust cloud and probably heard wagons and grunting and whatever else for quite a few hours in a row. They would have had a great view of the whole thing.
We traveled just south of Newark to Coochs Bridge, where Verdi Lee takes us to see where the Battle of Coochs Bridge was fought. This battle is significant as it's the opening battle of the Philadelphia campaign, when the British attempted to overtake the young republic's capital of Philadelphia.
In this cornfield is where the archaeologists found the battle line. There are dropped musket balls, there are impacted musket balls. It's where 200 to 400 men in two lines were firing upon the American troops behind us towards Coochs Bridge and to the house.
The house still stands today, as it would have in 1760.
What was the result of the battle?
The British are delayed, and then they end up being in the area for a few days. And then they move out and continue up towards Philadelphia to capture at the time, the capital of the colonies. This is hallowed ground.
Not far from the Battle of Coochs Bridge, we're visiting a home which days later would serve as a meeting place for top continental leaders to strategize on the defense of Philadelphia, the Hale Burns House, where author Kim Burdick meets me inside.
We're in a home that was owned by a Quaker family.
They don't believe in war. But one day there was a knock on the door, and it was Washington staff people saying, "Sorry, Mr. Pacifist Quaker, sir. We're having a council of war at your house at 5. See you around." And they did.
Josh Loper describes how top leaders were in this very home, which travelers can visit today.
So this Council of War meeting here, we have George Washington, Lafayette,
Knox, Greene, Sullivan, all the great names of the American Revolution, meeting, in fact, right in the next room, and of course getting served food made fresh from our fireplace. This 2-hour meeting in here created the largest battle of the American Revolution, the Battle of Brandywine. This is truly one of Delaware's little hidden gems.
When discovering American history, why not visit a historic pub and inn? Back in Newark, I'm getting the scoop with owner Jeremy Hughes.
Jeremy, Deer Park Tavern, popular today, but a rich history.
The original building that was here was the St. Patrick's Inn. Supposedly George Washington stayed here.
We love a good George Washington sighting.
And Edgar Allan Poe stayed here, and he was giving a lecture at the Newark Academy and put a curse on the building. "For all thee who enter shall always have to return." So a good curse for us.
Whoa, those are some nachos.
And I find the nachos are supreme.
I make nachos probably a couple times a week at home.
Okay.
Just like home, but bigger and better.
Just a 30-minute drive from Newark, in Wilmington, Haggley Museum and Library houses 19th century patent models, including patents signed by George Washington. It rests on the grounds of the ancestral home and gardens of the DuPont family. Chris Cassio takes me on a walk through the museum and behind the scenes to see a few special finds.
If you wanted to have an invention patented here in the United States, you had to submit a drawing, a description, and also a three-dimensional model of your invention. We're the only country in the world that had that model requirement. And so all of these represent unique solutions to everyday problems in the 19th century.
How much is in here?
It's in the 2,000 to 3,000 range.
So we are now behind the scenes. This is not open to the public.
Sadly.
So we're getting a special insider's view here.
We have this invention here, which is a numbering machine. The man who invented this actually helped develop the first commercially successful typewriter.
So the way we're typing on our smartphones dates back to the 19th century.
Exactly. That keyboard arrangement is the same arrangement they came up with in 1878. We also have some wonderful tin toys right here that are horse-themed. 2 patent documents that were signed by George Washington. George Washington, and actually every president from his administration all the way to 1836, signed every patent document.
George Washington is everywhere.
He is indeed everywhere.
Including in Wilmington, Delaware, where George Washington set up his headquarters to stop the British advance to Philadelphia in 1777. Later, in 1782 and 1783, where Wilmington's Opera House now stands, French troops were housed in what was called the Wilmington Academy. Skip Pinella meets me inside.
It was built in 1871. It was originally, quote, opera housed. A number of years ago, Tony Bennett was here with his full orchestra. Halfway through the show, he stopped. And he said, I want to play this next tune just with me and my piano player because the acoustics are so perfect.
Such a rich history with musicians, but also related to the American Revolution.
Not this particular building, but on this site, there was a hospital. Now, I wasn't chair at the time, so I can't verify that 100%, but no, it was used as a hospital.
Just down the road from the Opera House, Terry Sorrentino started Liquid Alchemy to make a honey-based spirit that was enjoyed in colonial times and well before.
Mead is made with honey, so there's so many different beverages out there, you know, malts and grains and grape wines, rice for sake, but we use honey as the base.
I think of mead and I think of my high school days, Canterbury Tales, but throughout history and even in colonial times and during the American Revolution, famous figures were drinking mead.
Right, wealthy, more aristocratic people as well who could afford to have the bees, but it's so drinkable and so unique. I think everyone should be drinking mead.
We have a darker and a lighter version here.
This is a mixture, it's called a pie mint. So this has the Montepulciano and Valpolicella grape with an orange blossom honey.
I like it.
It's nice and smooth. This is our 04, so mandarin, tangerine, blood orange, fermented with the orange blossom honey.
I can taste a little citrus, very floral. I think I'm gonna introduce my friends now to mead for happy hour, maybe for the holidays too.
I love it. Cheers.
I'm stopping for a nature excursion at White Clay Creek State Park. Claire Micklitz leads us to a key marker in the park, which is located near Delaware's northern border with Pennsylvania.
We actually have white clay deposits. There was a clay mining operation here to make porcelain. Now we have almost 4,000 acres of land here as a state park.
And the largest number of trails in a state park?
In all of Delaware state parks, yeah, we've got the most miles of trails. So this marker is actually the start of the Arc of Delaware. It marks where Delaware and Pennsylvania meet.
Delaware and Pennsylvania. We can be in 2 states at one time.
We can.
If we really stretch our legs.
About a 30-minute drive south from Wilmington, we're stopping in historic Odessa, another place with a key connection to both waterways and Philadelphia. Debbie Buxton of the Historic Odessa Foundation introduces me to the historic streets and homes, starting with the Corbett Sharp House.
William Corbett was a Quaker. He was a tanner by trade, and his tannery would have been located just about where you see the rise in that hill overlooking the Appoquinimink River.
What a beautiful view. Wow.
He was only 27 years old when he built this house. And this is the shortest distance over land between the Delaware and the Chesapeake Bay. So this was a major shipping port in the 18th century. And one of the wonderful things about this house is that it remained in the Corbett family until it was purchased by H. Rodney Sharp in 1938. And that's unheard of in a house of this age.
How is it that Odessa has remained so well preserved?
The people that live here have an interest in preservation, in historic preservation. It's preservation of the buildings, preservation of the land, and preservation and conservation of the collections.
Delaware's waterways have not only been important for commerce throughout history, but also as a refuge and breeding ground for migrating birds. We're exploring the Bombay Hook National Wildlife Refuge, located along the Atlantic Flyway.
On a good day, a good birder can come out here and find 50+ species of birds. It's really one of Delaware's absolute hot spots for birding.
Ranger Josh Smith takes me down the main road, which travelers can easily access in a vehicle to go birdwatching.
One side is freshwater, one side is saltwater here, or
Correct,
where? Yeah.
correct. So over here, we've got freshwater. This is all rain runoff. And on this side, this is salt and brackish water. And we keep them separated with this dike for birds to have a habitat and for people to experience that. It looks like he's eating on a fish. He's probably just been standing there holding it the whole time.
What makes this a good place for bald eagles?
The freshwater attracts anadromous fish that are coming up to spawn, but they get stuck. The fishing's easy, and well, eagles like that kind of thing.
It's wonderful that so many people can come and enjoy this today, and it's so accessible, especially here on the East Coast.
Just 20 minutes south, we're driving into Delaware's capital city of Dover. Dating back to 1791, the old State House served as Delaware's capital during the critical early years of our nation. Verdi Lee shares significant features and artwork housed inside.
So we're standing in what was an important capital for a while.
Yes. Now, in this building, we house not only above us the General Assembly, but also the courtroom. Lots of different things happened here, including Underground Railroad cases. There were all different types of legislation taking place here.
We head upstairs to see the former chambers of the state legislature.
So the General Assembly consists of both the House of Representatives and the Senate. The Senate chamber is right over here. George, he is 6'3", so Washington's full height, and he's the first item in the State Museum collection. If we go into the House of Representatives, what I also love about this room is this beautiful 18th century green that you don't really, right? Yeah. It just kind of associates more like a modern color than you would think a historic color.
Well, a lot of research has gone into rebuilding, redesigning, and keeping this site preserved, as you can tell.
You know, Delaware, we really love our history, we really do.
A small architectural and historical gem, the John Bell House is steps away.
And it's one of the oldest wooden structures we have remaining in the state of Delaware.
Jane Pilato shares more about this building, originally constructed as a workshop and tavern complex outbuilding.
How has this little wooden structure survived all of this time, and why?
Most buildings from the 18th century are going to survive because they're made of stone or brick, or because they had important people living or working there. This building has none of that. The people of Dover knew it was historic, they just didn't know its significance. It's one of the best testaments to what a wood frame structure would have looked like in the 18th century. In fact, there's going to be a very devastating fire in 1863 that's going to burn down the hotel that's next door. And the people of Dover knew that this building was historic, and so they rushed to preserve it. So if not for their actions that night, this building would have also gone up in flames.
In Dover, you can visit the John Dickinson Plantation, the childhood home of John Dickinson. Known as the penman of the Revolution, Dickinson was a lawyer and legislator who wrote letters from a farmer in Pennsylvania, which were widely read throughout the colonies and believed to help unite the colonists in the lead up to the American Revolution.
John was part of the Continental Congress, at the time representing Pennsylvania. And although he did not sign the Declaration of Independence, he went on to pick up a musket and, we believe, fight during the Revolutionary War.
Anne Fenimore takes me to see the home.
This oldest section is mostly how it looked when it was completed. Come on in.
And this is John Dickinson.
That is.
John Dickinson grew up here on this farm, but he would go on to study law in Philadelphia and then in England. Why do you think he chose to be a patriot?
While I can't point to any one single cause, he did have a lot of different influences here while he was growing up. He was taught by an indentured servant named William Killen. That might have informed some of his ideas about liberty while he was studying law under friends of his father's in Philadelphia, and then when he went to England, that could have informed him as well.
The plantation today shares the stories of the indentured servants, tenant farmers, and free and enslaved Black men, women, and children who lived, labored, and died on this plantation. The Plantation Stories Project is working to research and share stories of these individuals, like Violet Brown, an enslaved woman who went on to find freedom.
In here we also have a museum figure representing Violet. Violet's recollections helped us to pinpoint where the location of the African burial ground is.
John Dickinson's daughter, Sally, documented Violet's recollections. This text became one of the many pieces of a puzzle that researchers would use to find the African burial ground.
We said, let's actively look for the burial ground. I wanted us to find it, and I wanted that to be the words, as opposed to just looking for it. And to do that, we had to hire archaeologists. They found the location of the burial ground.
Site supervisor Gloria Henry was instrumental in the search.
We have records of some of the enslaved people who were buried here based on the records saying that they passed away while they were here. Oral history says 400. We don't know that for sure.
So much history to uncover, and I guess we can never really know everything.
It's kind of hard because we always want answers. So we look for the stories of the people who were living here and what happened to them. Because our job is to share those stories with everyone.
We're going back to before the Revolution starts in Delaware to understand more about what life was like during colonial times, and prior to that in Lewes, located in the southeastern part of the state at the mouth of the Delaware Bay. The Zwaanandael Museum pays tribute to this first settlement.
Zwaanandael is a Dutch word. Loosely translated, it means Valley of Swans. And when the first colonists come here in 1631, they call the area Zwaanandael.
Devin Filichikia shares this early history, complete with hidden treasures and a quirky maritime museum attraction.
You have a lot of maritime themes and maritime culture. What is this?
What do you mean? It's our merman. He's fabulous. The merman was brought to the Lewes area by a ship captain. They are made by craftsmen in Japan to represent kind of a trickster, half man, half fish character that can either bring you good luck or bring you bad luck. And when Japan opens up its borders in the 1850s, these objects start to be exported to the Western world, where they're then kind of turned into sideshow attractions. P.T. Barnum famously exhibits one in his museum in New York.
This figurine, this merman, is bringing you good or bad luck here?
I think he's only bringing us good luck.
Okay, I like that.
Before the Dutch arrived, the Nanticoke people had their homeland in this part of Delaware. Tribal member Bonnie Hall leads me through the Nanticoke Indian Museum, located in nearby Millsboro.
This was once a two-room schoolhouse.
It is on the National Registry of Historic Places. It was placed there in April 1979, and it is a hidden cultural treasure.
From the beautiful crafts to the jewelry.
Many of our donations have been passed down from generation to generation from our elders and our ancestors. Some of these, we can't even put an age to them. You know, they've been passed down and passed down. The Nanticoke tribe were hunters and gatherers. So many of our tribes, Native American tribes in this area, lived around waterways and rivers. The one thing that I think makes us different as a culture is the fact that we did everything we could to preserve Mother Earth. We want our young folks to take pride in their heritage and their tradition, and we want to teach them how they can not only value it, but more importantly, preserve it.
So many places in Delaware where history is preserved and shared by modern citizens who want their story and that of the first state to be remembered and recognized.
Thanks for joining us as we buzz around Wilmington, Delaware, and beyond here on Travels with Darley. Evelyn, have you been to Pennsylvania before?
No, Darley.
Come on over.
Oh, yeah.
Woo! Have you ever seen a cuter mascot? Did you say you wanted a ham and cheese croissant? Little kitty, Kenny the cat came over.
We're also yeah, we have a train about every 15 minutes.
Do it one more time. This side, that side.
What?